Silver Lake was a quiet place surrounded by tall pine trees, green hills, and a few wooden cabins built long ago by families who loved the peace of nature. Every summer, the lake came alive again. Families brought their boats, children ran to swim, and the sound of laughter spread across the water. It was a place where everyone felt free. Tom and his family had visited the lake for years. His grandpa, an old but strong man with silver hair and a calm face, had built their small cabin near the water with his own hands. Grandpa loved the lake more than anything. He said it reminded him that peace could exist in this world if people respected nature. On a bright Saturday morning, Tom and Grandpa packed their fishing rods, a picnic basket, and an old cooler full of cold drinks. They were excited to spend the day by the lake. The air smelled fresh and the sunlight made the water sparkle like glass. But when they reached the narrow dirt road that led to the lake, something unexpected stopped them. A large black pickup truck stood right in the middle of the path. It looked heavy and dusty, and on its door was a strange sticker that said, "Lake Property Security, HOA Patrol." Grandpa frowned when he saw it. Tom leaned forward from the passenger seat. "Grandpa, what is that?" Grandpa's eyes narrowed. "That's something I've never seen before." He parked their old van on the side and stepped out, using his walking stick to balance on the rough ground. The sound of insects filled the warm air. Grandpa walked closer to the truck and saw two men sitting in folding chairs near the edge of the lake. They wore sunglasses and fake metal badges on their shirts. Their truck blocked everyone from reaching the water. Grandpa called out, "Morning, gentlemen. Could you move your truck? People use this road to reach the lake." One of the men stood up. He had a thick beard and a smug smile. "Sorry, old man," he said. "Private property. Lake access is closed unless you have HOA permission." Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "HOA? There is no homeowners association here. This land belongs to the county." The man shrugged. "Rules change. We're here to protect the area from people who litter and damage the lake. If you want to use it, you need to pay a fine." Tom, standing behind Grandpa, felt his heart beat faster. He could see the other man watching them silently, holding a clipboard like a real officer, though it was obvious he was not. Grandpa looked calm, but Tom knew his grandfather well. When Grandpa's voice became soft, it meant he was angry inside. "You're telling me you made up rules for land that doesn't belong to you?" he said quietly. The man crossed his arms. "We're doing what's needed. Go home, sir. It's better for everyone." Tom expected Grandpa to argue, but instead he turned around and walked back to the van. "Come on, Tom," he said in a steady voice. "We'll go home for now." As they drove back, Tom looked through the window. He could see other families turning around too, confused and upset. Everyone was scared to speak up. When they reached their cabin, Grandma was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea. She noticed the disappointment on their faces. "You met the fake patrol, didn't you?" she said. Grandpa nodded. "So it's not just us," Grandma sighed. "They've been there for 3 days now. The neighbors say they shout at anyone who tries to go near the lake. Some people even said they ask for money." Tom looked shocked. "Did anyone call the sheriff?" "Yes," Grandma replied, "but the sheriff said he's investigating. Nothing has changed yet." Grandpa sat down on the porch, deep in thought. "If the law won't fix this," he said slowly, "then maybe we need to remind those men that they can't bully people forever." Tom watched his grandfather. He could tell Grandpa was planning something. When Grandpa got quiet like this, it meant he was thinking carefully, not rushing. He believed in fairness, not revenge. That night, the sky was full of stars. The forest around the cabin was silent except for the soft sound of crickets. Tom couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those men and how they scared people away from the lake. He went to get a glass of water, but then he heard faint noises coming from the barn. Curious, Tom peeked through the window. Grandpa was inside working under the dim light of an old lamp. He was using his toolbox, adjusting metal parts and sorting through wrenches. Tom saw him study a set of old tools that he had used for fixing tractors. There was something in Grandpa's calm focus that made Tom's heart race. The next morning, Grandpa was already awake before sunrise. He sat on the porch drinking coffee as the fog lifted from the trees. When Tom stepped out, Grandpa smiled. "Come on, boy," he said. "Let's take a little ride." Tom grabbed his backpack and followed. They drove the same dirt path, dust rising behind the tires. When they reached the turn toward the lake, they saw the same black truck again. The two men were still there, sitting like they owned the place. "Here we go again," Tom whispered. Grandpa stopped the van and stepped out, calm as ever. "Good morning again," he said to the fake officers. The bearded man smirked. "Didn't we tell you to stay away, old man?" Grandpa smiled faintly. "I remember. But I also remember that this land is open for everyone." "Not anymore," the man replied. "Now move along before we call the sheriff." Grandpa chuckled softly. "Go ahead. I'd love to hear what you tell him." The man frowned, unsure how to respond. Grandpa turned back toward Tom. "Come on, let's go for now." As they left, Tom noticed that Grandpa looked completely calm, almost too calm. "Grandpa, what are you going to do?" he asked quietly. Grandpa's eyes stayed on the road ahead. "Sometimes," he said, "you don't fight with words. You let people face the result of their own foolishness." Tom didn't understand what that meant yet, but he trusted his grandfather. That evening, Grandpa asked Tom to help him in the barn. Together, they gathered a few tools, a wrench, a hammer, and a large magnet. Grandpa explained how magnets could attract metal parts and how old trucks could have loose bolts if not tightened properly. "Are we going to fix something?" Tom asked. Grandpa gave a small smile. "In a way, yes. We're going to fix a problem at the lake." The next morning, Grandpa drove out again, this time with Tom and a small toolbox. The air was cool and the birds were just starting to sing. As they reached the lake road once more, the fake officer's truck was parked in the same spot. Grandpa parked his van a little distance away. "Stay here, Tom," he said. "Just watch." Tom watched as Grandpa walked slowly toward the truck. The men were inside, talking and laughing. They didn't notice the old man circling behind the vehicle, calm as ever. He crouched for a moment, then stood up and walked back. When he returned, Tom looked at him with wide eyes. "What did you do, Grandpa?" Grandpa smiled gently. "Just a small reminder that nothing man-made lasts forever." Tom didn't understand at first, but he would soon. Because that afternoon, when the fake officers tried to start their truck to leave, something unexpected happened. The engine made a loud crackling sound and then went completely silent. Smoke rose from under the hood. The men jumped out shouting in surprise. They tried to push, kick, and start the truck again, but it wouldn't move an inch. From their cabin porch, Grandpa and Tom could hear faint voices of confusion carried by the wind. Grandpa leaned back in his chair and said, "Sometimes justice doesn't come from the law. Sometimes it comes from a little patience and the right tools." Tom smiled. He didn't know how Grandpa did it, but he knew one thing. Those fake officers were not going to block the lake for long. The next morning, the air around Silver Lake was still and peaceful. The sun was climbing over the trees, painting golden lines across the calm water. Birds chirped from the pines, and the soft wind carried the smell of wet soil and pine needles. It should have been a perfect day to fish or swim, but the strange black truck still blocked the lake path. Tom sat on the porch steps, tying his boots, while Grandpa polished his old walking stick. Grandma came outside with 2 cups of tea. "You really think those men will leave now?" she asked softly. Grandpa smiled faintly. "Not yet. People like that don't learn fast. But soon they will." Tom looked up from his boots. "Grandpa, what exactly did you do to their truck yesterday?" Grandpa took a sip of tea and said calmly, "Let's just say their truck isn't as strong as it looks. I loosened a few things that shouldn't be loose." Tom's eyes widened. "You mean you took parts off their truck?" "Not took," Grandpa said with a small grin. "Borrowed a few bolts and clips. Nothing harmful, just enough to remind them they can't act like kings here." Tom chuckled. "So you stripped their truck a little?" Grandpa nodded. "Only what was needed." By afternoon, the sound of shouting echoed from the direction of the lake. Tom and Grandpa walked down the dirt road to see what was happening. The black truck stood at an angle, one side lower than the other. Its front tire had come off, rolling halfway down the slope. The 2 fake officers were running around the vehicle, arguing loudly. "I told you to check the bolts," one of them shouted. "You were supposed to do that," the other yelled back. Grandpa stopped a little distance away and watched quietly. "Seems they're having a rough day," he said with a straight face. Tom tried not to laugh. "Should we help them?" he whispered. Grandpa looked at him and smiled. "Help will come soon enough, but not from us." Soon a few other cabin owners came down the road too. Mr. Parker, who owned the big cabin near the hill, walked up with his fishing hat on. "What's all this?" he asked. The bearded fake officer tried to act tough. "Official HOA business. Please stay back." Mr. Parker frowned. "There's no HOA here." We built these cabins ourselves 20 years ago. The man waved a paper in his hand. We're managing new community rules. Pay a fee and you'll have access. The crowd murmured in confusion, but Grandpa stepped forward, his voice calm and firm. Son, this land belongs to the county. You have no right to block this road. You've already scared enough families away. The man glared at him. Old man, stay out of this. Tom saw Grandpa's eyes harden. You've already made me part of this, he said quietly. You see that cabin up the hill? That's mine, and that lake belongs to everyone who respects it. The fake officer opened his mouth to argue again, but just then, a white car appeared on the dirt road. It was the sheriff's car. Everyone stepped aside as Sheriff Mason climbed out. He was a tall man with a kind but serious face. What's going on here? The sheriff asked. The two fake officers quickly stood straight. Sheriff, these people are trespassing on restricted land, the bearded man said. We are HOA patrols keeping order. Sheriff Mason looked at them for a long moment. Then he said slowly, Funny, I don't remember any HOA patrol being registered here. Let me see your IDs. The men hesitated. The taller one pulled a card from his pocket, but the sheriff looked at it and shook his head. This isn't official. These are fake badges. The crowd started murmuring again. Tom felt a rush of excitement. The sheriff continued. You two are pretending to be officers and demanding money from people. That's not just wrong when it's illegal. The men looked nervous. We were just quiet, the sheriff said firmly. You'll have time to explain that downtown. He signaled to his deputy, who came out of the car. Together, they took the fake officers aside and started checking the truck. When they opened the door, they found a box of fake tickets, envelopes with cash, and printed signs saying HOA fines. Everyone watching gasped. Grandpa crossed his arms. Looks like justice arrived after all, he said quietly. The sheriff turned to Grandpa. Thank you for reporting this earlier. We've been watching them for a while, but we didn't have proof. I guess we do now. Grandpa nodded. They picked the wrong lake, the sheriff chuckled. You'd be surprised how many people try things like this. Pretend to be officials, collect fake fines, and scare folks away. We'll make sure they don't come back. After the fake officers were taken away, the sheriff arranged for their truck to be towed. The sound of the tow truck coming down the hill made everyone cheer. For the first time in days, people could walk freely to the lake again. But Grandpa wasn't done yet. That evening, when the sun dipped low, Tom found Grandpa sitting by the water, skipping small stones across the surface. You happy now that they're gone? Tom asked. Grandpa smiled but didn't answer right away. Happy isn't the word. I'm satisfied. But I also learned something. What's that? Tom asked. People can lose what's right in front of them when they stop standing up for it, Grandpa said slowly. Those men took over the lake because everyone let them. Nobody questioned them. Fear gave them power. Tom nodded thoughtfully. But you didn't let them win. Grandpa chuckled. Age doesn't mean weakness, boy. Sometimes it just means you've seen enough to know when to act. The next few days were peaceful again. Families came back to fish. Children played near the shore. And the laughter returned to Silver Lake. Everyone thanked Grandpa for helping. But he always smiled and said, I only did what anyone should do. Still, the story didn't end there. 3 days later, Tom saw Grandpa working on something near the barn again. He had the same calm look on his face and a set of shiny metal parts on the table. What's that for? Tom asked. Grandpa said, That old truck they towed away, it's sitting behind the county yard now. Sheriff said it's junk, but I thought maybe I'd learn a few things from it. It had good parts before those fools ruined it. Tom smiled. You're going to rebuild it? Grandpa nodded. Maybe. But this time I'll build it for someone who deserves it. When word spread that Grandpa had taken the leftover parts to make a small utility trailer for the community, everyone offered to help. Even the sheriff dropped by to thank him again. By the weekend, the new trailer was finished. It had a small sign on it made by Tom, painted in bright blue letters, for everyone who loves the lake. That trailer was used to carry picnic tables, trash bins, and fishing gear for the families who came to Silver Lake. One morning, as Grandpa looked at the lake shining under the rising sun, Tom said, Grandpa, do you think those fake officers will ever come back? Grandpa smiled softly. If they do, they'll find something better waiting for them. A community that doesn't get fooled so easily. Tom grinned. You really stripped that truck for good, didn't you? Grandpa laughed. Yes, boy, but not out of anger. I did it so people would remember that no one owns what belongs to everyone. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the peaceful sound of the lake across the hills. Silver Lake had its freedom back, and Grandpa, with his calm wisdom and clever hands, had made sure it stayed that way. For a few weeks, peace returned to Silver Lake. The air felt lighter, the laughter of children echoed near the water, and the scent of grilled food drifted through the trees. Families came every weekend again. Some people even started calling Grandpa a hero, though he never liked that word. He always said, "I just did what had to be done." Tom, on the other hand, loved hearing people talk about what happened. He told the story to his friends many times. How Grandpa faced the fake officers, how he fixed their truck without them knowing, and how the sheriff took them away. Each time he told it, he made Grandpa sound even braver. One bright Saturday morning, Tom and Grandpa decided to go fishing early. The mist was still rising off the lake, and the sunlight painted the water in gold and silver. Grandpa carried his small wooden tackle box while Tom carried the rods. They set up near their favorite spot, under a wide oak tree that gave plenty of shade. As they sat waiting for fish to bite, Grandpa looked peaceful. He wore his old brown hat, the same one he had worn for years. "You see, Tom," he said, "quiet mornings like this are what make life good. No noise, no trouble, just nature doing its work." Tom smiled. "I wish it stayed like this forever." Grandpa gave a small laugh. "Nothing stays forever, boy. That's why you enjoy it while it's here." They fished for almost an hour, catching a few small ones. But then the sound of an engine broke the silence. A vehicle was coming down the dirt road again. Grandpa slowly turned his head and frowned. It was another truck. Not the same one, but it looked similar. Dark gray, shiny, and with big wheels that kicked up dust. It stopped near the same spot where the fake officer's old truck used to be. Tom's face fell. "Oh no, not again." Two men stepped out. They looked different from the first pair, but they had the same kind of fake badges on their shirts. One of them had a radio clipped to his belt, and the other wore sunglasses and carried a clipboard. Grandpa stood up, brushing dust off his pants. "Looks like trouble doesn't learn its lesson the first time," Tom whispered. "What do we do?" "Let's go find out," Grandpa said calmly. They walked toward the truck. The taller man saw them coming and shouted, "This area is under HOA control. You can't park or fish here without a permit." Grandpa stopped a few steps away. "We've heard that line before," he said. "And I know for a fact there's no HOA here." The man raised his chin. "We're new management. The old officers messed up, but now it's official. We've taken over." Tom could see Grandpa's patience thinning. "Taken over what?" Grandpa asked. "This lake belongs to the county. You can't just come here and make up rules." The second man stepped closer. "Sir, calm down. We have documents to prove our rights." "Let me see them," Grandpa said. The man hesitated. Not right now." "They're in the office." Grandpa crossed his arms. "Where's that office?" The man looked away. "Downtown." Tom could tell the men were lying again. It was just like before, only this time they seemed a bit more careful. They had better badges and even fake papers with printed letters. Grandpa sighed. "You two are brave, I'll give you that. But you're also making the same mistake. And I don't think the sheriff will be as patient this time." The men laughed. "The sheriff doesn't care. We already talked to him," one of them said confidently. That made Grandpa pause. "Is that so?" he asked softly. "Then I'll give him a call myself." Grandpa took out his small phone from his pocket. The fake officers exchanged quick, nervous glances. Tom watched them closely. "They look scared," he whispered. Grandpa spoke to the sheriff, explaining everything. Sheriff Mason's voice came through clearly, even from where Tom stood. "No HOA still exists there, Mr. Harris. Stay calm. I'll be there soon." Grandpa smiled. "You heard that?" he said to the men. "He's on his way." The men suddenly became restless. "We don't have to stay for this," the taller one said, climbing into the truck. The other followed, but when they tried to start the engine, it made a grinding sound and refused to start. Grandpa raised his eyebrows. "Having some trouble?" he asked kindly. The men didn't answer. They got out again, slamming the doors. The taller man kicked one of the tires in anger. "Battery's dead," he said. Grandpa leaned closer to Tom and whispered, "They bought that truck secondhand from the county yard. It's the same one I fixed before. I can tell by the paint under the door." Tom gasped. "You mean that's the same truck you stripped?" Grandpa nodded slightly. "Looks like they thought they could repair it and start again." But some lessons come back to you. When the sheriff arrived a few minutes later, he stepped out of his car with a look of disbelief. "Didn't I just tow this thing a month ago?" he said. Grandpa chuckled. "You did? Seems like it found new owners." The sheriff questioned the men, checking their badges and papers. It didn't take long for him to realize they were fake again. "This is getting ridiculous," he said. "You two are coming with me." The men tried to explain that they had bought the truck from a friend who told them it came with the lake rights. The sheriff shook his head. "There are no lake rights here. You were fooled, and now you're fooling others." After the sheriff took them away, Grandpa sat on a rock near the lake and let out a deep breath. "Twice in one season," he said quietly. "Seems like Silver Lake's peace attracts trouble." Tom sat beside him. "You think someone's behind this?" Grandpa nodded slowly. "Could be. Someone might be trying to buy this land cheap by scaring families away. We'll find out soon." Later that evening, Grandpa talked with a few neighbors at the community bonfire. Mr. Parker, Mrs. Bell, and a few others agreed that strange people had been visiting nearby cabins, asking if anyone wanted to sell their property. They all looked nervous. Grandpa listened carefully. "Who are they?" he asked. "Don't know," Mrs. Bell said. "But they always mention a company that wants to manage the lake and build resorts." Grandpa's eyes darkened with thought. "So that's it," he said softly. "Someone wants this land and they're sending fake officers to scare people off." Tom looked shocked. "You think those men worked for the company?" "Maybe," Grandpa replied. "But we'll know soon enough. If someone wants to play games with this lake, they'll learn what real honesty looks like." That night, Grandpa worked again in his barn. The sound of clinking tools returned just like before. Tom peeked through the door and saw him working on something bigger this time. A small metal device that looked like a tracker or sensor. "What's that, Grandpa?" Tom asked. Grandpa smiled. "A little helper. If they come back again, I'll know before they even park their truck." Tom laughed. "You're turning into a detective?" Grandpa winked. "No, just a man who loves his lake." The next few mornings were calm, but Grandpa kept watch. Every sound of an engine made him alert. He had placed his small device near the entrance road, hidden under a pile of leaves. It could detect motion and send a small beep to a receiver inside the cabin. On the 5th day, early in the morning, the device beeped softly. Grandpa's eyes opened instantly. "They're back," he whispered. Tom jumped out of bed. "All ready?" Grandpa nodded. "But this time we're ready." He grabbed his coat, his walking stick, and the small metal toolbox he had prepared. As they stepped out into the cold morning air, the first light of dawn spread across Silver Lake. The sound of an approaching truck grew louder. Grandpa's calm face didn't change, but there was a glint in his eyes, the same quiet strength that had made everyone respect him. "Let's go, Tom," he said. "Looks like it's time to teach another lesson." The morning was cold, and a light fog hung over Silver Lake. The water looked like glass, smooth and quiet. But the peace didn't last long. The soft sound of birds singing was broken by the deep growl of a truck engine coming down the dirt road again. Grandpa stood on the porch with Tom beside him. His face stayed calm, but his sharp eyes were fixed on the road. The sound grew louder until a big black truck came into view. It wasn't the same one from before, but the logo on its door looked too familiar. Lake Property Security, HOA Management Division. Tom groaned. "Not again, Grandpa." "Why do they keep coming?" Grandpa took a slow breath. "Because someone still thinks they can control this place. But today we'll find out who." He picked up his walking stick and motioned to Tom to follow. They walked down the path toward the lake, their boots crunching over the gravel. As they came closer, they saw 3 men standing near the truck. They were dressed in matching uniforms, cleaner and newer than the ones before. They looked more confident, too, almost like they believed they truly had power here. One of them, the tallest, stepped forward. He wore a cap and a badge that shined in the sunlight. "Good morning," he said loudly. "We're here on behalf of Silver Lake Management. Starting today, this area will be closed for maintenance. No public access allowed." Grandpa didn't even flinch. "Closed by whose order?" The man pulled out a paper from his pocket. "By the new owner of Silver Lake Property. It's being developed into a private resort. Please pack your things and stay off the lake until further notice." Tom looked shocked. "New owner? That's impossible." Grandpa's calm voice cut through the air. "Who bought it?" The man hesitated. "You'll get that information when it's officially announced." Grandpa stepped closer, his voice firm. You boys are brave to come here again with your false papers. The county owns this land, and I know for a fact they haven't sold it. The man's eyes narrowed. Sir, we don't want trouble. Just follow the rules. Grandpa smiled faintly. You keep saying rules, but you don't even know what they are. At that moment, Tom noticed something strange. On the truck's tailgate, there was a small metal plate with faded letters. It looked like it had been painted over. He brushed it lightly with his hand and saw part of an old number underneath, the same number from the first fake HOA truck. Grandpa, he whispered. It's the same truck again. They just repainted it. Grandpa's eyes hardened. So they really didn't learn. He looked back at the men and said, Tell your boss that this old man isn't afraid of fake signs and fake owners. The tall man frowned. Watch your words, sir. Grandpa smiled again. Don't worry. My words are the truth, and truth doesn't break easily. The men didn't like that. They got back into their truck, saying they'd be back with official documents. But Grandpa knew they were bluffing. After they drove off, Grandpa and Tom went straight to the sheriff's office in town. Sheriff Mason greeted them with a firm handshake. I heard they showed up again, he said. Yes, Grandpa replied. And this time they said someone bought the lake. The sheriff looked surprised. Bought the lake? That's news to me. Grandpa leaned forward. Sheriff, I think there's someone behind them. Someone paying these men to scare people away so they can buy land cheap. Sheriff Mason nodded slowly. I've been thinking the same. A man named Mr. Dalton from a development company in the city has been asking about this area. Wants to turn it into a private resort, Tom spoke quickly. So he's sending those fake officers to scare everyone off? The sheriff sighed. Could be, but we need proof before we can stop him. Grandpa thought for a moment. Then he said, If he's using the same truck again, maybe it still has something left inside that can give us answers. Sheriff Mason smiled. You always think sharp, Mr. Harris. Let's find out. That afternoon, they went to the old county impound yard where the first truck had been kept before being auctioned off. The sheriff's friend, a mechanic, let them look at the record files. Sure enough, the truck had been sold to a company called Dalton Lake Holdings. The buyer was listed as Mr. Dalton. Tom clenched his fists. So he really was behind it. Grandpa nodded slowly. Now we know who's trying to take our lake. The sheriff wrote everything down carefully. Thank you for helping, Mr. Harris, but be careful. If Dalton is sending people again, he might try one more time before we stop him. Grandpa gave a small smile. If he comes again, he'll find out what patience can do. That night, the lake was quiet again, but Grandpa didn't rest. He worked in his barn under the light of his old lantern. Tom watched as he opened a small wooden box full of tools. What are you doing this time? Tom asked. Grandpa smiled. I'm just preparing. I have a feeling they'll be back soon, and I want to make sure we're ready. He began to take out metal rods, wires, and an old toolbox that looked older than Tom himself. He checked each piece carefully, cleaning and polishing them. By dawn, Grandpa was done. He had built something that looked like a simple wooden trap, but it wasn't dangerous. It was clever. A small setup that could lock the wheels of a truck if someone parked it in the same spot again. Is that safe? Tom asked. Perfectly safe, Grandpa said. It won't hurt anyone, but it will stop them long enough for the sheriff to catch them. The next morning, the fog was thick again. The lake looked quiet, almost sleepy. But Grandpa and Tom were ready. They set the wooden device near the lake path, hidden under the soil and leaves. Then they waited at their cabin, watching the road from a distance. By mid-morning, the sound came again. The truck was back. This time, it had 4 men instead of 3. They parked in the same place as before, stepping out with fake confidence. But the moment the tires rolled into that spot, there was a soft click sound. Grandpa smiled. Now let's see how they move that truck. The men got out and started shouting orders, trying to put up a big sign that said private property, resort construction coming soon. But when they tried to move their truck again, it wouldn't budge. They tried to reverse, but the wheels locked in place. What's wrong with this thing? One of them yelled. Tom laughed quietly. It's working, Grandpa. Grandpa nodded. Patience always wins. Just then, the sheriff's car came speeding down the road. He had been waiting nearby thanks to Grandpa's call earlier. When he saw the scene, he couldn't help but laugh. You caught them red-handed, Mr. Harris. The sheriff arrested the men and took pictures of everything. The fake sign, the badges, and the papers they carried. Later, they confirmed that all the men worked for Dalton Lake Holdings. By evening, the sheriff called Grandpa again. It's over, Mr. Harris. Dalton's company has been fined heavily for illegal activity. He won't be coming near Silver Lake again. Grandpa smiled with quiet relief. Good. Maybe now the lake can rest. That night, the whole community gathered around a bonfire near the water. Families brought food, children ran around, and the stars reflected in the calm lake. Everyone thanked Grandpa for standing up again, but he only said, "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. The lake belongs to the people who love it." Tom looked at his grandfather, proud and amazed. "You really showed them, Grandpa." Grandpa chuckled softly. "Sometimes the best way to fight trouble is to stay calm and think smart. Noise never solves anything." As the fire crackled and laughter filled the air, Silver Lake finally felt free again, protected not by fences or fake rules, but by the quiet courage of one old man who refused to be fooled. Silver Lake had never felt more peaceful. The sunlight danced on the water, children's laughter echoed across the hills, and the smell of pine and fresh water filled the air. After the recent events, the lake and its surroundings seemed almost to breathe a sigh of relief. Tom and Grandpa walked down the familiar dirt path, carrying fishing rods and a small picnic basket. It was early morning and the world felt still and calm. Even the birds seemed to be chirping more cheerfully. "Grandpa," Tom said quietly, "do you think anyone else will try to take over the lake?" Grandpa shook his head slowly. "Not anytime soon. People know now that Silver Lake is watched by those who love it, not by those who just want it for money." They reached the lake shore, and the water glimmered like a sheet of glass. Grandpa put down the basket and set up their small fishing spot. Tom helped him bait the hooks, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered all the trouble the fake HOA officers had caused. "Grandpa," he said, "it's amazing how you handled everything. Calm, smart, and always careful. How did you know what to do?" Grandpa smiled gently. "Experience, boy. And knowing that fear and lies never last forever, people will always see the truth if you give them time." Tom nodded, watching the water ripple. "But what about the company behind the men? Dalton Lake Holdings?" Grandpa leaned back on his walking stick. "Sheriff Mason told me they have been fined and warned. They won't try anything again, and if they do, the community is ready." The two of them fished quietly for an hour, catching small fish and letting them go. It felt like the lake had returned to its natural rhythm, calm, welcoming, and free. By late morning, neighbors started arriving. Families brought boats, blankets, and picnic baskets. Everyone wanted to celebrate the return of Silver Lake to the community. Some children ran past Tom, waving sticks as pretend fishing rods, laughing as if nothing had ever happened. Grandpa watched them with a gentle smile. "This is what it's about," he said softly. "Not fences, signs, or trucks, but people who care enough to protect something they love." Tom grinned. "You taught all of us that lesson, Grandpa." Grandpa chuckled. "We taught it together. One person can act, but it takes a community to protect." Later in the afternoon, Sheriff Mason came by with his deputy. They were greeted warmly by the residents. "I just wanted to make sure everyone knows the lake is safe," the sheriff said. "Dalton Lake Holdings has been fined and warned. Anyone pretending to be officers again will face serious consequences." Grandpa nodded. "That's good news. The lake belongs to everyone, not to those who think fear can buy them power." The sheriff smiled. "You've done more than most, Mr. Harris. You've shown patience, clever thinking, and courage. The community owes you thanks." Grandpa waved it off. "Thanks are not needed. The lake itself is enough reward." Tom helped his grandfather carry a few buckets of water from the lake to fill their small cooler. "Grandpa, what about the truck parts you took from the first fake officers? Did you do anything with them?" Grandpa winked. "Ah, yes. I used some to build a little trailer for the community. It carries picnic tables, chairs, and fishing equipment for anyone who comes here. That way everyone can enjoy the lake comfortably." Tom's eyes widened. "That's amazing." "Yes," Grandpa said. "It's better to use what was meant for trouble to help people instead." By evening, families gathered around a large fire near the shore. Someone brought marshmallows, and the smell of toasted bread and hot cocoa filled the air. Children ran in circles, making games up as they went. Adults chatted quietly, sharing stories and laughter. Grandpa sat on a log with Tom beside him, watching the scene unfold. "You know," he said softly, "the lake is stronger than any truck or sign. People respect it because they love it, not because someone forces them to." Tom smiled. "I get it now. It wasn't just about the truck or the men. It was about everyone standing together for something that matters. Grandpa nodded. Exactly, boy. Fear can block a road, but it can't block a community that cares. As the sun set, the water glowed with orange and pink reflections. The trees cast long shadows and the air cooled gently. Everyone had settled down around the fire and the laughter softened into quiet conversations. Grandpa looked around at the happy faces. This is why I love Silver Lake, he said. Not because it is calm or quiet, but because it brings people together. Tom looked at him and said, You didn't just protect the lake, Grandpa. You protected us too. Grandpa chuckled softly. I only did what anyone should do. But sometimes it takes an old man with a few tools and a little patience to remind others of what's right. The next morning, a few of the neighbors joined Grandpa and Tom to clean up the area. They picked up small sticks, removed rocks from paths, and checked the boats to make sure everything was safe. The trailer Grandpa had built was filled with fishing gear, life jackets, and blankets. Everyone helped, laughing as they worked together. This trailer is perfect, said Mrs. Bell, one of the longtime neighbors. Thank you for thinking of us, Grandpa. Grandpa smiled. It belongs to the lake and its people. Use it well. Even Sheriff Mason came by to check on the lake. He shook hands with Grandpa and said, You've done more than I could have expected. The lake is safe, the community is strong, and those fake officers won't bother anyone again. Grandpa nodded. Sometimes all it takes is patience, observation, and a little cleverness to solve a problem. Tom watched his grandfather, thinking about everything that had happened over the past weeks. The fake officers, the trucks, the threats, and the tricks. It all seemed like a story from another world. But it had happened right here at their lake, and it had taught him lessons about courage, patience, and standing up for what is right. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Tom and Grandpa sat quietly by the water. The lake shimmered under the fading light, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Grandpa, Tom said, do you think anyone will ever forget what happened? Grandpa smiled softly. Some might forget, but the lake remembers, and so will those who care for it. That's enough, Tom nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The lake wasn't just water and land. It was a symbol of patience, courage, and community, and Grandpa had protected it, not with anger or fear, but with wisdom, skill, and a calm heart. As night fell, the stars reflected in the water. Families had left, and only the soft sound of the wind and the distant hoot of an owl remained. Grandpa and Tom stayed a little longer, enjoying the quiet peace that had returned to Silver Lake. Tom finally stood and stretched. I think it's time we go home, Grandpa. Grandpa stood beside him, resting his hand on his walking stick. Yes, boy. The lake is safe, and we've done what we can. It will take care of itself now, just like always. They walked back to their cabin under the starlit sky. Tom looked at the lake one last time, its surface calm and clear. He felt proud, grateful, and happy. He knew that no matter what, Silver Lake would always be a place of peace and freedom. And Grandpa? He smiled quietly to himself, knowing that truth, patience, and courage could overcome any false threat. No matter how many trucks, badges, or lies came to the lake, Silver Lake had won. The community had won, and one wise old man had reminded everyone that protecting what you love requires not just strength, but calm thinking and care for others. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, peaceful, free, and ready for another summer of laughter, fishing, and quiet joy.